Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and the reactions continue to come in fast and furious to the Reddit renegades who stuck it up the clacker of the Wall Street hedge fund oligarchs. That was Matt Taibbi. That was the headline on his piece at his place on Substack.
Wall Street got caught with their pants down.
Suck it, Wall Street. In a blowout comedy for the ages, finance pirates take it up the clacker.
Arrgh, I'm a pirate. What the plank?
Dominic Green joins us now to talk about this a little bit. Life and arts editor for The Spectator. Dominic, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hello, Dan and Naomi.
Hello. There's this great exchange in a couple of seasons ago in the television series Fargo, based on the great Coen Brothers movie, where one character says to the other, "This is America. We don't have royalty. We don't have kings and queens." And the other character says, "Sure we do. We just call them by different names." And the names that we call them here are governor, president, congressman, hedge fund CEO, Jeff Zucker. That's what we call him here.
I think that's right. And you always got Harry and Meghan if you want to make it formal. But it's true. All of these studies that have been done in the last 3 decades confirm that social mobility has slowed in the U.S. And the result is you get a hardening of the class lines and a permanent ruling class, just like in the old world. And Americans, are always being told to pay more attention to race. But what they should really be doing is paying attention to what we call class, with a long A. And if you want someone to explain how class operates, you should ask a Brit, right?
Exactly.
Right. But it's so mobility, which is something we pride ourselves on in this country, land of opportunity. It's also something that conservatives pride themselves on in advocating for true free markets, because you could have, and by the way, interestingly, a lot of the oligarchs are proof positive of this. You can start from very little and grow up to have very much. And that's the story, frankly. Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, some of these, Larry Ellison, some of these multi-cajillionaires, these oligarchs in this day and time, they didn't come from massive money. They didn't come with particular bloodlines of any import. And look where they are today. But along the way, the culture has moved from this open competition, best goods and services, who builds the best mousetrap, to who does the best job of rent seeking, who does the best job of leveraging government to advantage themselves in their chosen field.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, people talk about the 1%, and it's a nice idea. It's a nice discrete target, small number of people. It promises you could solve the problem by getting rid of a relatively small part of the population. But actually, it looks like we're looking about 20% of the U.S. population permanently pulling away from the other 80% and forming really a different civilization, the kind of civilization in which you can afford to have a 2-parent family, in which you can afford to send children to private 4-year colleges. Because it's not just the insanely rich, the top 0.1%. It's the entire support staff that they need, all the services, all the experts, all the doctors and dentists and lawyers and teachers and so on. All of the elites across all of those other fields constitute the winners, in effect. And of course, they are lifting up the ladder behind them. And competition is most intense on that borderline between number 80 and number 79. When you're really going to be a big winner, or actually find that your value in the workplace is going down and down and down. And it's the children of those people, incidentally, who are the ones who have taken to the streets in protesting across the country over the last year, who've become radicalized, basically, because they understand in some way that they're not heading for a winner, with an expensive student debt and a 4-year degree in peace studies. That's not going to work. Meanwhile, of course, the rich get richer means the rich get more powerful. And when we look at what took place with the markets this week, this is when we look at the banning of Donald Trump from social media, you can see that the people who run the institutions of the United States no longer really care what most people think.
Well, it was a combination between social media and the financial system. They've intersected. But do you think what they did, market manipulation is criminal?
Well, as far as I understand, most of the people who are already working there are semi-criminal. If it's going to be a sort of semi-criminal business, and it should at least be a fair one, it's quite clear to me that the wrong people were making money and that this had to be stopped, that it's fine for a hedge fund to short the shares in the company and make loads of money, knowing that all the people who work for that company and all the people who rely upon that wage of those employees, all of them are going to be crushed by this. That's fine. But for people to band together and buy shares, which is entirely legal, that is not allowed. In other words, the market must be run to suit the rich. And of course, a majority of Americans have some connection to the stock market because of retirement funds and pensions and so on. They have some degree of stake. But the real power in the market is very clear, is not intended to belong with the ordinary investor. It's intended to belong to this very cozy arrangement between the biggest investment companies and the regulators, so that in all seriousness, the hedge fund company can go to the regulators and say, stop this trade. And in all seriousness, people will respond accordingly. But Discord, the site on which you could have bought shares in these games up and so on, Discord suspends its services. This is exactly the same dynamic as we saw with big tech. And you're right, the fusion of big tech, big money, and of course the Democratic Party is effectively making the democratic process totally disconnected from the economic and social reality of everyday life.
There's a certain attitude about it, too, and this really, I think, has come to the fore, has been impressed upon people across the country in the last 4 years because President Trump was like a flusher dog on a quail hunt. I mean, all of these the people flew out into the open, and you saw them for what they are. And you see this in examples every now and again. There's a slip up, and somebody uses the wrong vernacular to really betray what they think. So it's Jennifer Granholm during her confirmation hearing for Secretary of Energy talking about the jobs that will need to be sacrificed in advance of their great vision, like at the Keystone Pipeline. It's when Joe Biden on the campaign trail told West Virginia coal miners that they can learn to code. But nobody tells hedge fund managers, if they make a bad bet, that they can learn to code. They should already know how to code, but they can certainly learn to code if a West Virginia miner can. There's not that attitude towards them. There is that attitude towards others who get in the way of the grand vision and the Great Reset.
Oh, that's very true. I mean, and John Kerry said much the same. You know, to be working on the XL pipeline it's tough, but it's well-paid, unionized labor. Compare that to what Kerry offered as an alternative, which was assembling solar panels. Now, most of the world's solar panels are assembled in China. To seriously compete with that, you're going to be paying people a pittance for doing extremely boring production line labor. It simply does not compare. What he's saying basically is, become a peasant because it's good for the rest of us.
Yeah.
You know, sacrifice all ambition, all prospects, do the same monotonous, pointless thing for 40 years for peanuts, while the people who hold the shares in this company will continue to exploit their position and enrich themselves and make sure that their kids stay on that same rung of the ladder. That, to me, is not American. Well, rather, it has been American now and then in the U.S. history, but there have been laws passed against this sort of thing, and governments changed because of it. And the problem we have now is that the government, the administration, is on side with all of this. Big tech, big money, the Democrats. They're all in a row.
I want to ask you a larger question about culture, since this is your bailiwick. You know, there's a lot of focus right now thinking about the activists and even violence in advance of particular political ideologies across the spectrum. The idea that there's going to be a reckoning, there's going to be conflict, there may even be a civil war. What about the opposite? What about siloing? I'm only going to be on Parler, you're only going to be on Twitter or whatever when Parler comes back, or, you know, the conservative or perceived conservative. I'm only going to consume conservative news outlet content. I'm only going to watch CNN and MSNBC. Even now to the point where, look, the cigar shop I frequent in suburban Chicago made national news just a couple of weeks ago by posting a sign, Biden voters keep out. In Missouri, a gun shop, the Trigger Firearms and Reloading Company based in Missouri's capital, Jefferson City, we don't have guns or ammo for Biden supporters. Sorry for the inconvenience. Now, I don't think the gun shop or the cigar house is going to suffer much in the way of a customer base by taking that position, but it speaks to a larger dynamic that's at play. I don't want to even be around anyone who disagrees with me, much less do I want to interact with them.
Yeah, one of the strange things is that Americans have achieved the sort of geographical spacing that usually follows a terrible civil war. In other words, they've already sorted themselves voluntarily into different geographical regions, and then they've added to that the siloing of making sure that everything around you confirms your opinions. And that's very bad for a democratic society. It produces two societies, which is what we have, and it produces two foreign policies, two sets of policies on everything. The blizzard of executive orders that Joe Biden has just signed is an example of that. In other words, you come in and you erase every single trace of what the other party has done. This is no way to run a country. It does not guarantee the kind of stability that people need if they are to improve their lives, if they are to build something up for themselves and their families. They need an understanding in government that there is a sort of stability that runs through different administrations. And of course, at the moment, we don't have that at all.
Dominic Green, life and arts editor for The Spectator. Check out his most recent piece in The Spectator, Oligarchy in America. It's a good one. Dominic Green, thanks as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. GM says it will go mostly electric by 2035. McDonald's forecasts double-digit 2021 growth. And a German bank slashes 10,000 of its employees. Those stories next. You've all probably heard of asbestos and know that it's dangerous. Most mesothelioma diagnoses are thought to be related to asbestos exposure. People who were exposed to asbestos decades ago are being diagnosed to this day with mesothelioma. That's because it can take as many as 30 or even 50 years to develop. But did you also know there is money to pay victims of asbestos exposure from years ago? An estimated $30 billion is available to help compensate victims and their families. If you or a member of your family have been diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be able to receive some of this money without ever going to court or filing a lawsuit. Get a free legal review today. Call Sokolov Law at 1-800-910-1950. That number again, 1-800-910-1950. 1-800-910-1950. Call today. 1-800-910-1950. GM says the vast majority of vehicles it produces will be electric by the year 2035. GM also pledged the entire company will be completely carbon neutral 5 years after that. Executives say they've committed $27 billion to electric vehicles over the next 5 years.